These are the craziest WWE butterfly effects when one small change led to huge, unpredictable outcomes that changed wrestling history forever. Starting with the Day 1 incident when Roman Reigns getting quarantined led to Big E breaking his neck. On January 1st, 2022, WWE was set to kick off the new year with a stacked card. The main event would see Roman Reigns defend his Universal Championship against Brock Lesnar. However, hours before the show, news broke that Reigns had tested positive for COVID and couldn't compete. WWE had to scramble and make last-minute changes. Their solution was to add Brock Lesnar to the WWE Championship match and make it a fatal five-way instead. Lesnar dominated the match and walked out as the new WWE Champion. Had the Tribal Chief not been quarantined, Seth Rollins might have walked into WrestleMania with the WWE title. This could have turned the Cody Rhodes return match at WrestleMania against Rollins into a world title bout. But more importantly, according to initial plans, Lesnar was supposed to dethrone Reigns at the event. Reigns' historic title reign that eventually ended at WrestleMania 40 would have come to a premature finish had the Tribal Chief not been quarantined. However, the biggest loser of this situation was none other than Big E. After losing the WWE title, Big E slipped back into the tag team scene, and during a freak accident on an episode of SmackDown, the New Day member suffered a devastating injury that ended his in-ring career. But speaking of injuries that changed careers, let's talk about how Finn Balor's injury at SummerSlam 2016 caused a chain reaction that eventually led to the formation of AEW. In August 2016, WWE was ready to launch a new era on Raw with the Universal Championship. Finn Balor became the inaugural champion after defeating Seth Rollins at SummerSlam in a fantastic match. This was supposed to be Finn's moment to shine as the new face of Monday Night Raw. However, during the match, he suffered a severe shoulder injury that would require surgery. Just 24 hours after winning the title, he was forced to relinquish it. The company pivoted and eventually put the Universal Championship on Kevin Owens. Owens' eventual feud with Jericho became one of the best things on Raw, with plans for their feud to culminate at WrestleMania 33, with Jericho challenging Owens for the Universal Championship in one of the main event spots. But then WWE decided they wanted Goldberg versus Brock Lesnar for the Universal title instead. Owens lost his championship to Goldberg just a month before WrestleMania, and suddenly Jericho versus Owens went from a Universal title main event to a United States title match that went on second. For Jericho, this was the final straw. He felt disrespected and undervalued after delivering some of his best work. Following his disappointing WrestleMania 33 experience, Chris Jericho made a decision that would change professional wrestling forever. In January 2018, Jericho shocked the world by appearing at New Japan Pro Wrestling to challenge Kenny Omega. This was Jericho's first match outside of WWE since 1999. The match was a critical and commercial success, proving that wrestling stars could thrive outside the WWE system. But the impact went far beyond just one match. When All Elite Wrestling launched in January 2019, Chris Jericho became the company's first world champion. His presence gave AEW instant credibility and legitimacy in the eyes of fans and the media. Without Jericho's willingness to leave WWE and take that risk with New Japan, Tony Khan might never have been inspired to create AEW, and it all traced back to Finn's shoulder injury at SummerSlam 2016. But Jericho wasn't the only wrestler whose departure was crucial to AEW's formation. In May 2016, Cody Rhodes left WWE after years of frustration. Despite being the son of the legendary Dusty Rhodes, WWE never saw him as a main event talent. He'd gone through multiple character changes, but nothing clicked. The final straw was being stuck as Stardust, a character that Cody absolutely hated. In 2016, for the first time in his career, Cody ventured outside the WWE bubble. He embarked on a worldwide tour that saw him wrestle for Ring of Honor, Impact Wrestling, and New Japan Pro Wrestling. But more importantly, he joined the Bullet Club alongside Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, forming what would become known as the Elite. In 2017, wrestling journalist Dave Meltzer tweeted that Ring of Honor couldn't sell 10,000 tickets for an independent show. Cody and the Bucks took this as a personal challenge. Along with Kenny Omega and Hangman Page, they promoted an event called All In. The show was a massive success, drawing over 11,000 fans to the Sears Center in Chicago and 50,000 pay-per-view buys. This proved without a doubt that there was massive demand for a WWE alternative. Tony Khan, who was already planning a wrestling promotion, saw that the Elite had the star power needed to make his vision a reality. Within months, All Elite Wrestling was born, with Cody serving as an executive vice president and top star. None of this would have happened if WWE simply booked Cody better and kept him happy. But speaking of AEW, let's talk about a backstage incident that led to not one, but two huge WWE returns. In 2023, tensions between CM Punk and Jack Perry had been simmering for months. The situation exploded backstage at All In when the two got into a physical altercation following Punk's match. Reports indicated that Punk felt disrespected by Perry's actions during the match, leading to a confrontation. AEW owner Tony Khan witnessed the incident and made the difficult decision to terminate CM Punk's contract, ending what had been one of the most turbulent runs in recent wrestling history. After being fired from AEW, many wondered if his wrestling career was over. However, on November 25, 2023, at Survivor Series in Chicago, CM Punk made his shocking return to WWE after nearly a decade away. But the butterfly effect didn't stop there. Punk's return to WWE opened the door for another major comeback. AJ Lee, Punk's wife and a former WWE Divas champion who had been retired since 2015, made her surprise return in 2025 to team up with her husband. None of these returns happen if Jungle Jack simply kept his mouth shut. But moving on from AEW antics, let's talk about a recent WWE butterfly effect that changed the world title scene of WrestleMania. In early 2019, WWE was building towards something special on SmackDown. Daniel Bryan had reinvented himself as the planet's champion, and Mustafa Ali was being positioned as a top babyface challenger. Ali had impressed management with his underdog story, and the plan was for him to challenge Bryan for the title inside the Elimination Chamber. Everything was set for Ali's big moment. But then disaster struck when Ali suffered a concussion during a match that forced him out of action. WWE needed a replacement for the chamber match and turned to Kofi Kingston. What was supposed to be a simple substitution turned into something magical. At the Elimination Chamber, Kofi made it to the final two with Bryan, and even though he lost, the crowd gave him a standing ovation. The chants for Kofi grew louder each week, and WWE recognized they had struck gold. The company leaned into the story, creating parallels to Daniel Bryan's own rise in 2014. Over the following weeks, Kofi earned his WrestleMania 35 title shot, and at MetLife Stadium, in one of the most emotional moments in recent WrestleMania history, Kofi defeated Daniel Bryan to become WWE Champion after 11 years of hard work. It was the perfect underdog story, and it only happened because Mustafa Ali took a stiff kick from Randy Orton. But from Kofi's feel-good story, let's talk about one of the most unluckiest butterfly effects that completely destroyed a career. In 2007, Mr. Kennedy was on the verge of superstardom. He'd won the Money in the Bank briefcase at WrestleMania 23 and was being groomed as a future world champion. But then, Kennedy suffered an arm injury during a match. WWE's medical staff examined him and reported that he'd torn his tricep off the bone and would be out for 8 to 9 months. With Kennedy sidelined for the foreseeable future, WWE couldn't afford to keep the Money in the Bank briefcase on the shelf. They made the decision to have Kennedy drop the contract to Edge, who would go on to cash it in on The Undertaker as originally planned for Kennedy. Edge's subsequent feud with Undertaker became legendary and produced some of the best matches of both men's careers. But here's where the story takes a cruel twist. After Kennedy dropped the briefcase, WWE sent him for additional testing. The results came back and revealed that the original diagnosis was completely wrong. Kennedy didn't have a torn tricep at all. Instead, the injury was much less severe and he'd only be sidelined for 5 to 6 weeks. But by the time this was discovered, it was too late. Edge had already cashed in the Money in the Bank and Kennedy's main event push was gone. WWE tried to make it up to Kennedy later that year with an even bigger storyline. He was set to be revealed as Vince McMahon's illegitimate son in a major angle that would have made him a centerpiece of Raw. But Kennedy's luck ran out again when he was suspended for violating WWE's newly revised wellness policy. One misdiagnosis cost Kennedy a world championship run and potentially changed the entire trajectory of his career, while simultaneously leading to one of the most entertaining feuds in SmackDown history with Edge versus The Undertaker. Speaking of The Undertaker, did you know that Mark Henry was originally supposed to end Taker's streak at Mania 22? If WWE had gone ahead with the original plans, we'd never get the classic Taker versus HBK matches, plus the end of an era match at Mania 28 would have never happened. But while we're on the topic of Taker's streak, let's talk about the man who ended the streak. In the early 2000s, Brock Lesnar was positioned as the future of WWE. At just 25 years old, he became the youngest WWE champion in history. The plan was for Lesnar to dominate the main event scene for the next decade or more. But there was one problem nobody anticipated. Lesnar absolutely hated the WWE schedule. The constant travel, performing multiple times per week, dealing with injuries, and the overall grind of professional wrestling wore on Lesnar quickly. On March 8, 2004, Lesnar shocked the wrestling world by informing WWE he was leaving the company to pursue a career in the NFL. His departure happened at the worst possible time for SmackDown. Kurt Angle needed neck surgery after WrestleMania. Big Show was taking time off. Rock and Austin had left, and the company needed new stars to fill the main event scene. John Bradshaw Layfield, who'd been a mid-card tag team wrestler, was suddenly thrust into the main event scene and given the longest WWE Championship reign in nearly a decade. Randy Orton's push was accelerated, making him the youngest World Heavyweight Champion at just 24 years old. Meanwhile, John Cena, who was already rising up the card, received an even bigger push in Lesnar's absence. Had Lesnar not left in 2004, Cena might have still become a star, but maybe not the record-breaking 17-time world champion who carried the company for years. Edge's career would have been drastically different too. He was often used to carry SmackDown during the late 2000s, but with Lesnar anchoring the brand, Edge might have remained in the upper mid-card. JBL would likely have been released rather than receiving the championship run that extended his career by years. Batista's rise to the main event might have been delayed, as WWE would have been less desperate for new top stars. One man's decision to leave because he couldn't handle the travel schedule created a domino effect that's still being felt 2 decades later. But while Lesnar's exit might have opened the door for Cena's rise to the top, let's talk about the time when Cena was almost shown the exit door out of the WWE. By the end of 2002, John Cena's WWE career was hanging by a thread. He'd debuted on SmackDown with a strong showing against Kurt Angle, but despite the initial momentum, Cena quickly faded into obscurity. He was just another generic wrestler with no defined character or personality. WWE management saw nothing special in him, and after just a few months on the roster, the company was preparing to release him. But then, fate intervened in the most unexpected way. During a European tour, WWE superstars were traveling on a bus, and Cena was freestyling with other wrestlers in the back. He was just having fun, showing off his rapping skills to kill time during the long ride. But Stephanie McMahon happened to overhear him, and something clicked. She saw potential in Cena's natural charisma and quick wit. Stephanie approached Cena and asked if he'd be interested in bringing a rapper character to television. Desperate to save his job, Cena immediately agreed, and this would lead to the infamous Doctor of Thugonomics gimmick that revived Cena's career. Just 2.5 years after that incident, Cena was WWE champion. He'd go on to carry the company during the PG era and even became a record-breaking 17-time world champion in the process. Think about how different WWE would look if Stephanie McMahon hadn't overheard Cena freestyling. But moving on from the PG and ruthless aggression era, let's talk about how a single decision in the 90s didn't just change WWE, it altered the entire landscape of professional wrestling and set off a chain reaction that's still influencing the business today. By 1996, both Nash and Hall had become major stars in WWF. Both men were valuable to WWF's future plans. However, WCW was making aggressive moves to compete with WWF. Eric Bischoff had launched Monday Nitro and was signing away WWF talent with lucrative contracts. When Bischoff approached Nash and Hall, he offered them something WWF couldn't match at the time: guaranteed contracts with significantly less dates. For wrestlers who were tired of the grueling WWF schedule, it was a no-brainer. They jumped ship to WCW, and their final WWF matches took place at a Madison Square Garden house show in May 1996. What happened next changed wrestling forever. Nash and Hall's departure led directly to the creation of the New World Order, where Hall and Nash invaded WCW as outsiders and eventually convinced Hulk Hogan to turn heel and join them, causing WCW's business to explode. Suddenly, WCW was beating WWF in the ratings every single week. The Monday Night Wars had truly begun, and WWF was losing badly. Hall and Nash leaving WWF set the stage for Stone Cold Steve Austin's rise. On their way out of the WWF, Nash and Hall broke kayfabe and shared a moment with their real-life friends, Shawn Michaels and Triple H, in an incident that came to be known as the Curtain Call. This led to Triple H being punished and Austin winning King of the Ring instead. Without that moment, Austin might never have delivered his Austin 3:16 promo or received the push that made him the biggest star in wrestling history. Think about how different the wrestling landscape would be if Nash and Hall had stayed. There's no NWO, which means WCW probably never becomes serious competition. Without serious competition, we never get the Monday Night Wars, and WWE never creates the Attitude Era. Speaking of the Attitude Era, check out this video next about the year that gave birth to the Attitude Era and changed wrestling history forever.